Shalom Chavra. So the goal of today's shiur is to delve deeper into the sight of Moshe Rabbeinu. We're going to try to understand a very, very powerful topic in Torah. But to start, I want to ask you to enter into a very interesting thought experiment with me. I want you to imagine what it would be like if you were blind. Now, lo aleinu, chas v'shalom, should never happen to anyone. But I want you to imagine the experience of life without sight. And to do that, I want you to imagine that you've lived your whole life with sight, but suddenly it's gone. What does that feel like? What's the experience of losing your physical sight? So, to start, you'd feel pretty alone. The whole world disappears. You're now stuck inside your head. There's no form, there's no image, there's no way of experiencing the outside world as you know it. That disappears. You might be scared. It's dangerous. You don't know if you walk outside, you can't cross the street now. You're going to have to learn how to navigate a world without sight, which is horrifying to consider if you've lived your whole life depending on it. But something else might start to happen as well. You might start to realize that you will begin to see the world with different eyes. So you will no longer see the world through your physical eyes. You'll see the world, in a sense, through your different senses. So for example, you've had sight, so you actually can remember the concept of what things look like, and you'll begin to hear the world. You'll begin to hear the world and create a form of sight in your mind to navigate the world. So, if you hear the doorbell ring, you know someone's at the door, and you know what a door looks like, so you know how to open it. You start to recreate the world inside your mind. You'll also start to develop a powerful imagination. You'll start to create a world of sight inside of your mind. And that will, in a sense, partner and maybe even replace reality. Like for you now, the real world exists solely in your mind. Now, in terms of actual neuroscience, that's the way the world always exists. When you see things, you don't see them. Light's hitting your retina, it's refracting, it's creating a neural response, neurons are firing, and inside your brain, an image is formed. When you go into your memory and you recall what something looks like, you're actually harnessing an artificial form of sight. And so much of life is playing with sight. For example, when you see a picture, that's a documented image of something that was originally in the form of sight in the world, and now it's been crystallized into an eternal present frame. When you watch a video, you're recreating a visual experience of something that originally occurred. When you watch a film, a movie, you're basically letting go of your hold on reality and being swept away into an imaginary form of visualization. So you're being swept away into an experience of seeing what's happening, even though you know it's not actually happening. And if you've watched a film, you know that it's not what's happening at all. The entire thing is fake. It's constructed, and people are saying lines that they memorized and are pretending to be characters that they're not. But so much of life is the experience of sight and experience of meaning and the story of visualization without really, really delving deeper into what it means. So the questions that we're going to delve into now are basically the most fascinating questions of Torah, which is Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who received the Torah. Nevi'im received not the Torah, but Nach, Nevi'im and Ksuvim. What is Nevuah? What's prophecy? Moshe, so much of Moshe's life was a complication of sight and sound. So for example, when he came down from Mount Torah, he was so radiant. His body was so luminescent and so literally glowing with transcendent light. People couldn't see him. He had to cover his face. Before Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah, he couldn't speak. He had trouble formulating words, which, there's a famous machlokas of Rishonim, the Rashbam, the Ran, the Maharal, what exactly was his speech impediment. We'll talk about that. But this concept of sight, this concept of sound, what it means to see reality, what it means to hear reality, what it means to understand and experience reality, it's the essence of everything. So let's start with a very simple question, which is, what is prophecy? So the Chazal actually discuss, and it's delved much deeper in the Achronim, and actually it's rooted in the Rishonim as well, in terms of how Nevi'im actually used to go to a yeshiva, a school, an academy, to train to become Nevi'im. Like I remember in high school, one of the Rebbeim gave a shiur on how to become a Navi. And he was basically just quoting all the different makoros throughout Torah in terms of what the Nevi'im actually did to become prophets. It wasn't just this magical thing that happened. You had to aim towards greatness. It was basically achieving spiritual greatness. Mastering your mind, mastering your intellectual faculties, mastering your spiritual midos, mastering yourself, and then it wasn't guaranteed. Hashem had to give you nevuah, but even to become a kli, a vessel, to receive nevuah, you had to prepare yourself. But what is prophecy? So, the process of learning, when you learn Torah, you learn Chumash and Rashi, you learn Gemara Be'iyah, you learn Machshav, you learn Machshava Be'iyah, you learn Kabbalah Be'iyah, you learn Musar Be'iyah. What are you doing? You're actually forming an impression in your mind on how to see the world. Ideas transform your mind, your life, yourself. The height of heights, the absolute crescendo of spiritual greatness was nevuah. We don't have it anymore. We have levels of, inspiration still. We have Ruach HaKodesh on minimal levels, like when someone's inspired with a chiddush in Torah, or comes up with a novel idea, or comes up with a song or a creative expression. Where's that come from? Like, where do your thoughts come from? Well, I came up with an idea. If you didn't have it, and now you have it, where did it come from? So in Yiddish, it's called an einful, like Hashem drops it into your mind, which is a powerful concept of the hierarchy of nevuah, right? We know there's Ruach HaKodesh, there's higher levels of Ruach HaKodesh, Avram and Sarah, right? Hashem says, listen to Sarah, your wife, she has a higher level of prophecy. There's levels of Nevi'im. The Rambam says that the Ikar of Emunah is not just to believe in nevuah, but to believe in Moshe's prophecy, and that Moshe's prophecy was the highest level of prophecy. Why? Because Torah isn't prophecy, Torah is the pinnacle, as in it's the height, as in nothing can be higher than it, which is why every other Navi who comes and contradicts the Torah is a Navi Sheker. Because by definition, if it contradicts the Torah, it's not that, and this is, the Bali Machshav actually talk about whether Nevi'ei Sheker are completely false or just false in relation to the hierarchy of truth, which gets into, the Rambam talks about what's the value of Christianity, what's the value of Islam. Are these things complete sheker or actually closer to the truth than idolatry or complete idolatry, so it's valuable in bringing the world towards an ultimate truth. So there is a hierarchy of truth in general. But one of the things to value is the hierarchy of thought in general. So when you're 5, when you're 15, when you're 25, your mind should be elevating in its clarity and depth. So Chazal talk about, and Rav Dessler delves into this, the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah and other nevi'im, which is that the essence of prophecy is actually, in a certain sense, to be blinded by light, to be blinded by truth, for truth to just flow into your inner world, into your mind. And that's why, in a sense, prophecy was an otherworldly experience. It was almost like leaving this world of physical sight behind, and you're entering into a realm of higher sight. So when you close your eyes, the Vilna Gaon talks about this, how Torah is timeless wisdom. right? So when you close your eyes and you contemplate life and the meaning of life and your place in the world and what life is about, you're not really thinking about what you had for dinner yesterday or the struggle you had the week before or that pain in your back or the thing you're trying to accomplish tomorrow. You're delving into things that transcend time and space altogether. So when you transcend time and space, you are using time and space, but you're having an otherworldly experience. So you can ponder something deep and an hour will go by and it feels like a second. Or, like, it's kind of like in a dream, where like a dream can last for 100 years in your mind, but it can take 3 seconds in actual time. Because as the Vilna Gaon explains, dreams are entering into a different form, different realm of time and space, and that's why Chazal say that a dream is a taste of prophecy, Gemara Brachos. And the essence of nevuah and dreams and consciousness and creativity, it's delving into different layers of experience, different levels of clarity, different levels of understanding reality, different levels of seeing reality. It's being able to see without seeing. So when you think about the concept of truth, there's no real image that comes to your mind. When you think about Moshe Rabbeinu, it's like classic paradox. You think of a person, but also a faceless person, right? When you think of a piece of bread, you can imagine a piece of bread. So there are things that you can imagine in your mind, but you're not really imagining an image. And prophecy and delving deeper into truth, so someone who wants to devote their life to meaning and purpose and truth and understand the story of life, you try to delve deeper and deeper, and at a certain point you start having to let go because your mind can't grasp or contain that infinite. And that really is the journey of prophecy. So the way that Chazal, the Maharal, Rav Dessel, the Ramchal, they talk about Moshe's prophecy in relation to other prophets is that Moshe saw reality and truth with a crystal clear lens. He saw reality as it is. Aspect, he had a clear window into reality. Whereas other Nevi'im, they saw it through more of a cloudy lens. It wasn't pure. It wasn't clear. It was, so to speak, receiving the same message with kind of a fuzzy frequency. So if I were to speak like this, you hear me clear. If I were to speak like this, you can still hear what I'm saying, but it's not so easy. It's not so easy to hear. You have to decipher. Right? If you're seeing an image, it's clear. If you see an image from 100 years ago, it's pretty blurry, like the famous images of the Chavetz Chaim. It's amazing to see, but it's not like if we had an HD clear definition picture of a Gadol from a couple years ago. So seeing truth clearly, it's like when you are trying to learn a topic, a deep topic, a complex topic, in Gemara, Machshava, in life, the first time you're addressing it, it's very difficult because things aren't clear yet. You don't know the principles in place. You're trying to define the words. You're trying to clarify what the pieces are. The next time you go over, it's clear, and you can actually go deeper. The next time it's even clearer, you can go deeper. It's like also when you grow in just intellectual capacity. When you're 13, you might have a different level of intellectual strength than when you're 23, when you're 33. So the beauty of Torah is that, the same Gadol that's learning a pasuk in Torah, a 5-year-old's learning a pasuk, but they're learning at different levels. But that Gadol was once a 5-year-old. And same thing for you. When you're learning, you learned it maybe a year ago, 10 years ago. You're seeing it with new eyes because you are bringing your new level of consciousness and intellectual clarity to the table. The second element is that Moshe Rabbeinu's face would glow when he had nevuah, after he was having nevuah, and that was distinct. And what was the distinction? The distinction is that the Ramchal explains Moshe Rabbeinu's guf, his body, was unlike any other person's body. It was actually only in parallel to Chanoch and Eliyahu Hanavi. Because all three of them, their physical body became transcendent. So, for example, one way to think of it is that when you die, your mind, your soul, your consciousness, your neshama goes to Olam HaNeshamos, Gan Eden. Adam Harishon, his body, his physical body, was in there. So where your spiritual self will go, that was the level of his physical body. Your physical body can't go there, right? So Eliyahu Navi just went on the chariot straight up. Hanoch, he walked straight out of his shoes, went right up to Gan Eden. Everyone else, their body has to stay behind. The Ramchal says Tchias HaMesim is where your body will actually come back down into this world as an ideal transcendent guf, like Moshe Rabbeinu's guf. So his body was transcendent, as in his mind, his neshama so uplifted his body with his spiritual growth that it transformed his actual physical entity, his physical body. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was also able to have nevuah while awake. Well, every other prophet had to be asleep. Why? Because remember the Vilna Gaon. When you sleep, your mind transcends your body. You enter a different realm of time and space and consciousness and ability to encounter truth, without getting into even the concept of seeing the future. Because if you're transcending time and space, you're entering into a realm where everything is past, present, future. So you see the future because you see it as the present, because it already is. Right? That concept of prophecy is just going outside the realm of time and space. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to prophecy while awake because, once again, he was able to tap into that frequency in his body. His body was on that level. And that's also why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have to receive prophecy. He was able to voluntarily enter it, because for a prophet to get to that realm, you're not there and you need to enter. But you can't enter. You have to become a kli that Hashem flows in once you open yourself up, which is why a prophet would try, and sometimes he would get prophecy, sometimes he wouldn't. But Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't entering that state. He was there. So it's not like I'm asking to enter it. It's that Moshe Rabbeinu, literally his default state of being was at the absolute crescendo and height of spiritual possibility. Which is it's unbelievable to think about, because you ever have those moments where you have mental energy and clarity and things are flowing and things are vibing, everything's working, but then you lose that. And then it comes back and then you lose it. And okay, maybe you can train yourself so that you can access it more at will. Imagine being able to be there at all times. Now, a flip on that is, would you want to be there at all times? It seems pretty draining, overwhelming, pretty intense, unless it isn't. But again, that's kind of a question you want to think about, is that's a different life. That's a different experience of life. And the most important thing about Moshe's prophecy, as the Rambam explained, is the content. Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy was Torah. Moshe, that's why we say, literally we call it Torah's Moshe, like Moshe's Torah. Because Moshe and Torah are almost interchangeable, as in they equal each other, because Moshe's prophecy is Torah. And that's why the Rambam's Ikar Emunah is that you believe in Moshe's prophecy as unique, in the sense that no one else's prophecy can ever reach Moshe's, because Moshe is, let's say I have 1 to 100, every Navi can get from 1 to 99, 100 is Torah, Moshe received the Torah. So no one can get past that. That's the way the Rambam tries to formulate the importance of understanding the nature of Moshe's prophecy. And this is where we get into what I find to be one of the most fascinating topics in Torah, which is the concept of speech, the concept of thought, the concept of Moshe's speech. So Moshe famously had a speech impediment, and that's why he had difficulty speaking. What was a speech impediment? So famous debate. The Rashbam gives a very pshat-oriented explanation, says that Moshe's speech impediment, the reason why he was unable to go down to Mitzrayim and speak and represent Hashem, is he said, I forgot the Egyptian language, I won't be able to communicate. So Hashem says, I have Aaron, that's going to be good. The Ran says, no, it was a literal speech impediment, and then Moshe had trouble speaking in order that people shouldn't say people only accepted Moshe and the Torah because he was an inspirational speaker. Okay, because maybe it's just a cult. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu just brainwashed them and said, all these crazy cults. It's amazing what a great order can do. The Kool-Aid, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Years ago, this crazy, crazy cult leader convinced everyone to poison themselves. And if they poisoned themselves and drank the Kool-Aid, some alien ship, they were going to basically, it was going to help them survive and, so to speak, go to some paradise, whatever it is. But if you believe with absolute certainty in a truth, people will do anything that they believe to be true. So if Moshe was an inspirational speaker and he had the power, the gift of gab, and can inspire people to do what he wanted because he was such an eloquent speaker, maybe people will say Klal Yisrael only accepted the Torah because of Moshe, not Na'aseh v'nishma, not because of the truth for truth's sake, but because we believed in Moshe. So that's why the Ran says that Moshe has speech impediments, so people would always know that Klal Yisrael accepted the Torah for Torah's sake, not just because of Moshe's power speech. But the Maharal suggests something what I personally believe is one of the most powerful ideas in Torah, which is that Moshe's speech impediment was a reflection of his greatness. When we speak, what happens? We take our thoughts and we try to find a package for them. All right, davar in Hebrew means a word, it also means a thing. It also means milah is a word. Milah means to cut, and it also means like kind of like a case that you can put something in. Because when you speak, you're trying to take the actual thoughts in your mind and express them in a way that other people can receive it. And the speech is not the actual thought. So when you're thinking something and trying to communicate in a meaningful way to someone, there's always this feeling like I'm not really fully saying what I mean to say, but I hope you understand. Because the thought is not the words, and the words also, people hear the words and they're going to project their own understanding onto those words unless they learn how to really hear. Which is to say, not what do I mean when I say these words, but what do you mean? So if I said, I'm having a really difficult day, and this was an extraordinary challenge, and I love a challenge. So I have to say, what do you mean by difficult? What do you mean by extraordinary? What do you mean by love? What do you mean by challenge? Like, I need to understand what you're actually saying, as opposed to, oh, if I said those words, I'd be referring to, this is the worst day of my life, but I'm getting through it. Whereas if you took 5 minutes to break it down and actually say, what do you mean by that? They might say that, no, I'm actually gaining all my sense of meaning from the fact that I'm growing from this challenge, because despite the fact that it's really, really difficult, I believe Hashem sent this to me for a reason. And there would just be a complete miscommunication because we're just projecting, the speaker's projecting their meaning onto the words, because that's what speech is. The listener isn't trying to understand, or they're just not skilled at understanding, so they're just saying, this is what I would have meant if I said those words, and then I say, oh, I know exactly what you mean. But they don't, because they're two different worlds. So speech itself is a very difficult thing in general. When it comes to wisdom, when it comes to truth, the nature of Hashem, the nature of existence, the nature of the physical world, the purpose of existence, the essence of Torah wisdom, and the relationship between the infinite and the finite, and the nature of time and space, and the nature of the progression of the story of the world, and the reason for the creation of the world in relation to what actually has happened throughout history. If you spend an hour, a day, a year, a decade on these questions, it becomes almost inconceivable to express what you've learned into words, because it's so unfathomable that words can contain it. It's like if I were to ask you to describe the infinite in words, it's like, I can try, but the infinite by definition is something that cannot be contained, so words wouldn't be able to contain it. I can speak around it. I can say it's something that goes on forever. I can say something that has no limit, has no form, has no concrete finite elements. But again, these words are kind of walking around what the thing is. If we were to try to experience what life really feels like what does it feel like to be you? What is the experience of you like? What's your story? Where did you come from? How did you get to where you are? How do you feel about that? Where are you going? Why are you going there? So sometimes people won't be able to put into words because they don't know. Sometimes people won't be able to put into words because there are just no words that can capture it. So we try, but it's just very difficult. And to really put into words is to believe it's worth putting into words and that there will be some value. And then you want to have a listener that actually wants to listen and is capable of listening. And it's just very rare. So much of this bottled up infinity within us either never gets put into words or we try, but it becomes very difficult. The Maharal explains that Moshe's speech impediment is that he was so tapped into truth that he couldn't speak. He could not put his mind into words because the infinite cannot be put into a finite case. If you have an infinite amount of water, no cup can contain it. So he couldn't do it. And that's what Aaron represented as his finite partner to convey the infinite in speech. And that's why the Maharal explains that once Hashem gave over the Torah, which is the definition of taking the infinite wisdom of emes, of truth, and putting it into finite words, Vayedaber Moshe, the first thing that Moshe does is in Sefer Devarim, where Moshe speaks, he speaks. The Maharal says that was the antidote to his speech impediment. Once Hashem showed him the infinite could be put into the finite in such a way that it doesn't betray the meaning of the infinite, but it can be conveyed loyally in those words, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to do the same. But as Chazal explained, Moshe's life was not simple. Moshe lived this transcendent life, and if you look at what happened with Moshe and Zipporah and with his marriage, and if you look at what happened with Miriam and Aaron and the Lashon Hara of them truly believing, Lashon Hara is saying the emes, but in a way that is disruptive and destructive, and Miriam and Aaron were trying to say the emes for a productive sake, to help, but Hashem was saying, no, you're wrong. You cannot speak the truth about Moshe in that way because it's not going to be productive. And Moshe lived a very, very difficult, tragic life. He couldn't enter into Eretz Yisrael because he wasn't able to take the infinite and purely express it into a finite world, which is what Yeshua's role was in taking Klal Yisrael from the Midbar, a place of Nisim Niglaim, open miracles, the Bear Miriam, the Well of Miriam, and the Mun, and we talk about Sukkah and the Shechina surrounding Klal Yisrael, the Shechina Mamish, Hashem protecting us, and that transitioned into a world of Teva, natural miracles, as the Ramban explained, which was time of Purim and Hanukkah, entering into the more natural realm where everything in the world is a miracle, but there are rules to the miracles that Hashem runs, so to speak. So what goes up comes down. You age as you go through time. You eat food, you have to digest it, unlike the man. We enter the world of, so to speak, the hidden miracles of nature. Moshe couldn't take us there. He couldn't take the infinite realm of Klal Yisrael and bring it into the finite, because without getting into all the details, hitting the rock, inappropriate action, as in engaging with the physical in a way that it can't or is not best received, that was Moshe's struggle. His struggle was taking the infinite realm of speech within the realm of the mind and expressing it into the finite, his speech impediment. The transcendent essence that he was and being able to engage in a marriage, someone who is more oriented towards this world, right? Tzipporah is literal in her name, is Tzipporah comes from the notion of Tzipor, sapphire, as Chazal explained, right? Like the spheros, like the sapphire nature of Moshe's Mata, like something which is crystallized and takes the transcendent and expresses it into the finite. That was Moshe's lifelong struggle that he succeeded to such an extraordinary extent. That's why he was able to receive the Torah. But there was a sadness to his story as well, with the end of his marriage to Tzipporah, with not being able to enter Eretz Yisrael, with, hitting the rock as opposed to speaking to it. And it really is a representation of a very powerful topic. A topic which I think doesn't get addressed often enough, but it's a topic of the danger and the sacrifice of pursuing greatness. When you pursue greatness, And when you pursue the ultimate, when you pursue the truth, when you pursue perfection, when you pursue everything you believe deep down Hashem created you for, there is a warning that must be given beforehand, though none will listen if you are ignited on the fire of pursuit of that destination. But the warning is Moshe's story. The warning is there is a sacrifice and a danger in that story. The first sacrifice is normalcy. If you value every moment of your day, if you want to pursue greatness in Torah, if you want to pursue greatness, you want to get healthy, if you want to pursue greatness in business or finance or your career, if you want to pursue greatness in music and art, in just emotional experience and self-awareness and meditation and in dveikus and in tefillah and in Torah's nigla and Torah's nister, if you want to pursue greatness, you're just not going to experience life the same way that you used to or the same way that most people do. Number one, you're going to view time differently. You're going to value every moment of time, and where most people are drawn to figuring out how to get through time, how to pass the time by, how to enjoy time and entertain themselves and make a living and survive and kind of just get things done, you are trying to build something with your life. And if you're going to build something with your life, you can't waste time. So you're going to live with a certain intensity and intentionality that most people don't have because they're not in the same wavelength as you. They're trying to be a good person, you're trying to be a great person. They're trying to learn, you're trying to build. They're trying to check off, can I sleep with myself at night? You're trying to figure out how to create the greatest future for yourself and for other people as humanly possible. And you start to see things differently. Everything in life becomes your library, becomes a playroom, a base medrash for the next stage of your development. And you see everything through the realm of opportunity, and you start to use the world as a means of actualization of potential, yours and everyone else's, and every element of potential. And that's just a level of intensity that most people will not want to be around, will not enjoy, and they'll be put off to the point that it might actually be uncomfortable for them to be around you. So one option is to really figure out how to navigate, as in you can have on and off buttons, you can kind of figure out the threshold, not go too far. But these are the questions you want to think about also. If you're in the pursuit of greatness, think about relationships. Like, really think about it. It's like, do you have any idea how hard it is to be in a relationship? Like, think about a marriage that breaks down. A marriage that breaks down, there's a couple options. One is that someone did something horrible, awful. Betrayal, just complete sabotage of the relationship, just loss of trust, etc. The other option is that think about what a relationship, let's talk about a marriage. A marriage is a commitment that we're going to spend the rest of our life with each other. But that commitment was made when person A was here and person B was there, and the hope was that you'd grow in the same direction, in the same vicinity, that you'd, be the same people together and love each other forever. What happens if one person's changing? What happens if you're changing at such a velocity that who you were when you got married has no longer really anything to do with who you are now, because you've gone through so many chapters of growth that you're just not there anymore. So think of a Baal Tshuva. Two people get married, one's religious, one's not religious, the other's not religious, and one becomes religious. Well, we didn't agree to that when we got married, so what, I don't want to live a religious life, says the person who's not religious. So what happens? So one option is that the other person who is religious inspires the person who's not religious to become religious. The other option is that they accept each other. One's going to be religious, one's not going to be religious. The other option is this just can't work. When we got married, we had an agreement, we were going in a certain direction, and we're just growing in different directions, and the marriage itself is shattered. So we're not getting divorced in order to break the relationship. We're getting divorced because the relationship has already become broken because we are no longer in the same world. We've entered different worlds. Let's say, one person's a Jew. Let's say two people are non-Jewish. One person converts, right? You're literally not the same person you were when we got married. But it's also, let's say you have a different worldview now. Let's say you start going 100% down. Let's say one person wants to become an entrepreneur and they lived a very safe life until then. Right? That creates, not necessarily we're in different worlds, but you're starting to head down a path. But let's say I literally go through transformation. So we're talking about a very uncomfortable thing, which is that one reason why people don't grow at accelerated rates is because of the resistance from their parents, from their friends, from their siblings, from their spouse, from their kids. Because if you are in a certain vicinity and you grow more than 1 or 2 notches away from where you currently are, if you keep on going down the direction, you're going to leave everyone else behind unless they come with you, and you can't really make people come with you. So if you think about Moshe Rabbeinu's story, it's someone who just left the world behind, and that has a cost. To pursue truth, to pursue the ultimate, to pursue, and it's like the literal embodiment of Torah is someone who was unable to pursue the ultimate perfection in harmony with the world that he left behind. Which is, it's truly fascinating to think about Moshe as the paradigm. And even think about your health. When you are on fire, when you have that level of intensity, think about the stress that puts on your system. Think about the anxiety. Like, most people wake up to the fact that they're going to die when they're around 50, and then they, put that memory to sleep as fast as they possibly can. If you live with the awareness of how precious every moment is and how quickly life goes by and how you are mortal and life will end, there's a level of tremendous anxiety that comes with actually embracing the truth. Then you're empowered because now you get to utilize time. You value it. But at what cost? The pressure that puts on your every waking moment because you now live without the illusion that you live forever and that you can do whatever you want and that nothing really matters. Right? So is it worth it? Is it worth it to live with that truth? And that's why the truth can consume you. Ideas can consume you. Purpose can consume you. The desire to actualize your potential can consume you. And we're not even talking about the mental health pressures of guilt and shame of living a life of Torah. It's a related topic, but I'm talking about if you put the weight and responsibility of achieving something great on your shoulders, there's a cost to living in alignment with that orientation. If you're 18, 25, 35, 45, and you're aiming for something that's almost impossible, and you say, it doesn't matter if I achieve it, but that's what my life's going to be about. I'm going to aim towards it. There's no life more extraordinary and exciting than that's the adventure of life, but there's a cost. You don't get to just live carefree and just happy-go-lucky and say, well, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You can add an element of that, but, when you're aiming for greatness, oh my. Like if you look at the way Gedolim orient themselves, you look at the way at elite athletes, look at Tom Brady, look at Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. If you look at the way that elite thinkers and just anyone who's pursuing the extraordinary, look at elite business people and people who are entrepreneurs, there is so much stress and anxiety because of the level of intensity in which they orient their lives. And it's self-imposed. They make the decision, I want this life. But then it just consumes their nervous system. It just consumes their body. And that's why Rav Dessler explains that a huge essence of Nevuah is ego. That the higher you go, it's not that the higher you go, the better you get. It's that the only way you can go higher is if, in a certain sense, you're able to eliminate ego. So the clear window through which you see the world and the kind of dusty, foggy, it's like one of my favorite stories, is a father wanted to teach his daughter lessons, so at night he took his daughter to the mirror and said, "Look out, what do you see?" And she says, "Oh, I see myself." And then the next day he took her to the mirror and he said, "What do you see?" And she says, "I see beautiful trees and the sky and clouds and the sun, and what happened?" And he smiled and said, "This is actually a window. As I'm sure you know by now, it's not a window, it's not a mirror, but a window can be a mirror, or a window can be a window. If you're able to peer past the surface, you can see a whole world that lives beyond. But if you get stuck on the surface," and he showed her the original version of this window at night when there's light in the room, you don't really see outside, you see a reflection. So there are ways of creating so much light inside and so much of a level of reflection that you can't see past the surface. So Rav Dessler explains that in order to see truth, you have to be able to get past yourself. You have to let yourself, so to speak, get pulled down so you can see that which exists beyond yourself. If you project yourself onto everything, all you'll see is yourself. Whereas if you disappear and you want to see and experience what is, the truth can inform you as opposed to you informing the truth. The truth can imprint itself and impact you as opposed to you imprinting yourself onto it and projecting yourself onto it, which is such a powerful principle of learning. Because every time you learn something, if you're not willing to give it up, you can't go deeper. But if you're willing to give it up, you can go deeper. And that's scary when you're pursuing the truth, because if you've learned a lot, then if you give up what you know to get to the next level, there's a scary thing about, what if I don't like what lies on the other side? What if I can't handle it? Or what if there is nothing that lies on the other side? So when you're delving into a sugya in Torah and you learn it, and then you go deeper and learn, I'll say, I'll give just a simple example. I'll start very simple with Gemara. And then the Gemara. Then you learn the Gemara and the Rishonim. And then you learn the Gemara and the Rishonim and all of the Gemaras that those Rishonim mention. And then you learn the Rishonim on those Gemaras. And then you learn, you keep on going deeper and deeper. Then you learn the Achronim. And you start to put it together. It's like at a certain point, the topic can either all come together or it can all fall apart. If you go deep enough into it, as in if you go deep enough down the rabbit hole, and if you haven't done this before, this isn't going to make sense. But it's the same thing with your approach to life, your understanding of Torah, your understanding of Hashem, of your own purpose. You get to a point where it's okay, maybe this is enough. Maybe I can accept this. I'll just do this for the rest of my life. But you say, maybe there's something more. Maybe there's something deeper. So you say, maybe I'll give this up and seek a deeper teacher, a deeper approach, a deeper makor, a deeper source, a deeper understanding. But what if you give up your current understanding and there's nothing on the other side? Or there's something on the other side, but it's not what you wanted or expected or are willing to accept. It's like there's a very vulnerable nature to the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of the ultimate, which is you have to be willing to give up where you are to get where you could be, but sometimes people are very comfortable with what they currently have. So it's like in business, if you make $1 million, you're willing to risk it for 10 million, or willing to risk the 10 million for 100 million, or really willing to risk the 100 million for $1 billion. A lot of people, they get to a point where they're like, no, I'm done. But then some people want to play the infinite game. The infinite game is that there's always something on the other side, and I want to play the game. I don't want to have achieved enough. It's like, one of my pet peeves is someone who's given a shiur, and that becomes the shiur. So they give the same shiur every time they talk on the topic, word for 50 years. They finish the topic. And then you have people who every time they talk, it's on a deeper level. They've added layers, they've added context, they've added elements, they've gotten better at putting the right stories in the right places and interconnecting and delving into higher levels of hierarchical thinking. And it's like, this person's actually thinking. This person's actually growing 25 years later, even though they're talking about the same topic, it's no longer the same talk. But it's, again, very, very difficult to go on that type of journey because there's a delicate nature to the flexibility of that chaos of instability, where things aren't just static. They're not complete, they're not finished. Moshe Shapiro used to say that the moment that Torah becomes just that, as in like you wrote it down and that's it, that's not Torah Sheba'al Peh anymore. That's a dead form of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh needs to be alive. It needs to be constantly flowing, evolving, growing, expanding, and interconnecting and deepening. The moment that it's just that, you've entered a realm of Torah Sheba'al and that's no longer Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's still valuable in the sense that it's Torah, but that's not Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh is, it's flowing. You're thinking, you're speaking, you're developing, you're processing, you're pushing against it, you're pushing back, you're pulling. Everything is in flux. It's the chaos of growth. The moment that everything's perfect and set, it's no longer in that realm of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And this brings us really to the conclusion of our topic, the last chapter, which is greatness worth it? Is it worth it? And the truth is that if you have that question, you're not ready. Personally, I think pursuing greatness is the only way, but also the most difficult way to live life. You'll never achieve it. I've been aspiring for as long as I can remember, and I haven't even touched the surface, but it's the journey that becomes worth it. But at the same time, there is so much sacrifice. So much sacrifice, because it's like, people ask the question, like, should I stay up late at night? No one's going to give you permission. If you have to ask the question, you're not ready. Because to enter into a journey such as pursuing the truth, pursuing your passion, pursuing your purpose, pursuing the ultimate, pursuing greatness, you can't have the question of, should I do it? It has to be that you cannot but do it. Every fiber of your being is being pulled at a velocity that you cannot simply express into words towards that goal, that your entire essence is screaming to do it. If you don't do it, it's almost like that wouldn't be life. Like, you cannot imagine a life not doing it. It's like, I once time heard a couple famous Jewish singers who get asked, like, should I go into music? And they say, if you cannot but do this, this is the path for you. If it's an option, you can't do it. Because to succeed in creativity, to finance, to monetize your passion, singing, music, art, wisdom, to monetize passion and art is so difficult that if it's something that you're considering, you shouldn't do it because you won't succeed. Because number one, it has to, in order to succeed, you have to be so passionate, focused, obsessed, and determined that you will work 100 times as hard as anyone else. Because for you, it's a game, it's life, it's love, it's literally life itself. As in, it's going to be easy to work 100 times as hard, because for some people it's a job. For you, it's not a job. It's like the greatest joy. But the artist's life, the creative's life, the thinker's life, the passion pursuer's life, it's one where even if you fail, you succeeded. Because you're living in alignment with the way that life makes sense to you. If you're not doing this, it's not a life worth living to you. And that's why you're doing it. So if you, let's say, are pursuing it and it's like you feel like you're living a storybook life, like the hero story, you read a book and it's like you're the main character of that book because you're doing it. You're actually living life in alignment with the way you think life should be lived. So if you do that and you don't succeed, so to speak, and you make, let's say, barely make a living, and it's hard and you suffer, you struggle, And you say, would you rather that life than living a life that you absolutely despise and you're making a living? Which one would you choose? Would you want to hate your life and survive, or love your life and suffer? Either way, you're going to suffer. Either way, you're going to be in pain. Life is pain. You choose your pain. For some people, the pain is, I can pay the bills, but I hate every day of my life. For other people, the pain of their life is, my health is struggling, my relationships are struggling, my mind is struggling, my existence is struggling, but I'm fully engaged in trying to pursue what I believe I was created to do in this world. Both people are in pain. It's just a different type of pain. And for some people, they cannot deal with the financial burden of uncertainty. For some people, they cannot deal with the intensity, the anxiety that comes with trying to actually accept the weight and responsibility of the power of the calling of life. As the Bali Machshav explained, Avram Avinu, what was his godless, his greatness? Not that he went on the Lech Lecha journey, but that he listened. The classic question is, why did Hashem tell Avram and not anyone else? The answer is many different answers, but one of the most beautiful answers is that Hashem told everyone Avram was the only one who listened. We all feel that we should be doing more with life, and for a lot of people, it's so hard to say yes to that calling because it's going to be so hard if you say yes. For other people, there's nothing more difficult and more hard than saying no. I have to say yes, because if I say no, my life is going to be hard just in a different way. I'm going to despise the life I've chosen. And one of the most powerful lines in life is, not choosing is still choosing. So saying, I'll just not choose to live that extraordinary purpose-driven life. I'll wait for the right time. But not choosing is choosing. It's just a choice not to choose. You can play semantics and say, no, I didn't make a choice. But not making a choice is choosing not to make a choice. So when it comes to this type of life, the Moshe Rabbeinu oriented life, you want to be honest with yourself. And I do like the musician approach of, if you cannot but do it, like it's literally your lifeblood. And the line's basically, it's not asking yourself, should I do it? It's just asking yourself, how do I do it? There's no other path. This is the path. So then you already know that like you're heading down this path. And is it worth it? There's no real way to answer it, because it's a very difficult question. And I think the Rambam's approach is the greatest approach, which is, first of all, he says everyone could be a tzaddik like Moshe Rabbeinu, which means everyone can strive to actualize their potential like Moshe Rabbeinu, and he uses Moshe Rabbeinu, and being that we've just talked about who Moshe Rabbeinu was, that's a very interesting example to give. But the Rambam's template for life was Shvil Zahav, was living a life of super intense obsession and intensity, but balanced. And it sounds like an oxymoron, it sounds like a paradox, but it's not, because if we're talking about obsession, we're talking about intensity, we're talking about aiming towards greatness. What does balance mean? Balance doesn't mean you go halfway. Right? People think it's like yes, no, middle. Balance means harmony. It means synthesis. I love music. You have a piano and guitar here. Harmony is not playing half of the notes. It's playing all the notes in unison together, but in a way that they melt into each other and flow. So there's no tension, and you're not having conflicting forces propel against one another in a way that everything breaks down into chaos. You create something beautiful, you create something harmonious, something angelic, something that has that level of balance, in the sense that it's like pshara, compromise, is not 50-50. It's everyone wins. It's win-win. MS is the balance of all pieces together. The greatest way to pursue greatness is to aim, fire, and then really just try your best to balance the chaos that erupts from trying. And it's not easy, because what is the ideal balance? How do you do it well? How do you do it so that you don't break down? How do you do it so that you remain healthy and vibrant and able to live well in this world, able to do well in this world? It's unanswerable. Because if you look at those who do it, the ones that you're looking at are your role models. Those are one out of the many that tried, that succeeded. And the ones that you see don't trying, they're not trying. So you look at the success stories and the non-success stories, but there's a couple things. Number one is that it's okay for people to try and not succeed because they're still trying, and that's the greatest form of life in so many ways. Those who do succeed, they often don't share the actual path they took, the struggles they faced, the fact that it was a 25-year process. It wasn't like this is who I always was. And it's great for you to be at the top now, but you need to inspire people on the 25-year trajectory and how not to give up when things get hard. But the best piece of advice I can give, and this is my favorite mashal, is that if you're really, really aiming towards the ultimate, if you're aiming towards greatness, if you want to be the best version of yourself, if you want to be everything Hashem created you to become, if you want to actualize all the potential that you have laying dormant within you, the best mashal I can give in terms of how to understand that type of life, it's like being blindfolded, not being able to see, and walking on the edge of a cliff. And your job is to find the edge. Find the literal edge. Where can you walk or crawl or inch towards? Where's the end? How far can you go? And you inch, and you walk, and you climb. And eventually after, and again, you can't see, because you're living in a realm beyond sight. You're feeling, you're hearing, you're trying to, just like we started this entire shiur, imagining life without being able to see. If you're aiming for the ultimate, you don't know what your future is going to be like. You don't know if you're going to succeed. You don't know what's going to come at any point in the journey. And you have emunah and bitachon, and you still try, and you don't know what you're capable of. You don't know what your breaking point is. So you inch, and you go step by step, and eventually you'll find the edge. But this is a unique type of cliff edge, and it moves every once in a while. So when you grow and you reach your tipping point, that's not your tipping point, that's your tipping point now. But if you try again in a week, a month, a year, a decade from now, it could be in a completely different realm. So every once in a while you feel that edge and say, can I move it further? Can I push further? And the pursuit of greatness, the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of the ultimate, it's a lifelong journey of self-awareness, of just talking to Hashem, talking to yourself, getting to know yourself, getting to know Hashem. It's experimentation. It's recognizing that you don't have to have it all figured out. But you can be inspired to try. And I'll end off with my favorite line, which is, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to become great.